There. Good morning, and welcome to Scott's Amateur Woodshop. Today, I'd like to show you how to buy your first square, and how to use it, how to test it for accuracy before you buy it, not necessarily in that order. So, square is a useful measuring tool to have. You can use it to do small measurements if it has measurement increments on it. You can use it to mark 90 degrees. It's very often used. Let's say you have a board like this and you want to cut off a length. You would mark a line with the square before you cut it with your handsaw. I'm assuming you can't fit a table saw into your small apartment. Maybe you can. You'll probably still need a square at some point. So what type of square should you buy? There's all different types, right? You could buy, one of the largest kinds you could buy is a carpenter's square like this. This is a little bit awkward because you actually have to tilt it. If you just put it flat on the work, right, it just sits on top, right? So you actually have to tilt it down like that so that it catches on the edge. Now you could get a tri-square, which is a different style of square, which is smaller than this and has a ledge, so it catches on the edge. That's a very nice common type for woodworking. I might recommend that you get one of those at some point. Another very common type for woodworking that's nice and versatile is a combination square, which has a ruler and a stock that it goes in. But for a variety of reasons, I'm not going to recommend any of those types. What you're looking for is some combination of inexpensive, accurate, and versatile, I would say. So the one I bought is in the style of a speed square, which is really made for carpentry. But I just bought one that's very accurately milled and good enough for woodworking. It's this Milwaukee brand. If you Google for Milwaukee Speed Square, you'll find it. This is a 7-inch model. And it can do a few different things. You'll notice it has measuring increments up here. These notches work like a marking gauge. You put your pencil in one, and you can put one at the 1-inch mark, for example, and then slide the square while your pencil is caught in that notch. And you'll mark a line 1 inch from the edge. That can be very useful in woodworking. It also does a bunch of angle stuff. It's really designed for roof construction, and so it's nice, I suppose, that if you ever wanted to do some carpentry, you'd already have a square for it. But I find it's just a handy one to have around the house if you only had one. And I like it a lot. And I found this for about 16 bucks when I just checked online. So it's relatively affordable compared to buying like a Starrett combination square. If you have money to do that, maybe do that. That's a good option too. So, one problem with squares, by the way, they're not always square. So maybe you go to your local big box store, you see the Empire version of this, it's blue, and you say, should I buy that? Well, I don't know, maybe. I think they're probably, yeah, that would be a good one too. But if you're buying it in person, which is a good idea with a square, you want to check it for square before you take it home, because sometimes they're not square and then they're really useless. So if you're in the store, here's an easy way to check for square. You grab something off the shelf in the same section that is supposedly a straight edge. Pick up the one that you trust the most based on looking at it. If you want to check it for straight, you can hold it up to another one of the same type. Make sure you can't see any light between them, either in the middle or at the ends. So you have a straight edge, right? Then you take your square off the shelf. Now, if you're at the store, you ought to be able to take two off the shelf. Put one like this on the straight edge. Then you put the other one here. I guess I'll use my carpenter's square just to show you. You put the other square here. Now you make sure they all line up perfectly with no gaps. They should. If they don't, something's not right. And there's something in there that you don't want to buy. And then you just have to swap around and figure out which one's which. So another way you can check a square for square is you have to have a board with a straight edge. Or a straight edge. Come to think of it, I might recommend you buy a straight edge at some point too. So if you have a straight edge that you trust, you can hold it up to the edge of your board and make sure there's no light coming through. Now, really, to get a straight edge on a board, you need a hand plane or a jointer or something like that. But you might use the edge of your workbench if it's been made and you trust it in the past. You might use a factory edge on a piece of plywood. Those are usually pretty good. In any case, this edge seems to be straight, so I'm going to use it. I've done this before on the front edge of my workbench too. So this is another way to check for square if you're not in the store and you don't have 2 squares to take off the shelf. I'm going to show it to you with this really big pencil. It's called a super pencil, because I just want it to show up better on camera. In reality, if I was doing this for myself, I would use a mechanical pencil with a 0.5 millimeter lead on the small side for accuracy, right? So you take your square, put it on your straight edge. You see that? It's on my straight edge. I'll just do it up here. Okay? Then I'm going to mark a line. Okay? Now we're going to flip the square over and we're going to see if we can mark the same line or a parallel line. So I'm going to mark another line very close to this. Now, if you can draw the same line or 2 lines close together that are parallel, like I have here, your square is square. And that's good. So now that you have a square, what might you like to do with it? Well, all kinds of things. I'll just give you one example to get you started. Here's a board. I don't know what kind of wood it is. Looks like it might be mahogany or the like. I find it to be attractive and something I might want to play with for some coasters. So yeah, it's about the right size. Look, I can set my mug on it. Seems like a reasonable size for a coaster. I don't know how many inches that is. So I'd like to cut off a piece. Okay, I'm going to mark a line with my square. Now, where do I mark a line with my square? Well, I could measure how wide it is. Oh, 4 inches. And measure that again. That would be pretty accurate. Since I have a nice 45-degree line on this square, what I can do is just think about it in terms of geometry and move this until this line exactly intersects this corner down here. And then I can mark this point up here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mark that point right there. And it's a little hard to see this dark pencil on dark wood, so I'm going to keep my thumb right there. Now, I want to mark a square line, and I want to cut to it. Now, a more accurate way to mark wood than a pencil is a knife. And if you took my advice, you have a knife. This is a carving knife, not a marking knife, but it actually works pretty great for marking, I think. It has a nice wide flat bevel here that you can rest against the square. So, we're going to take our square, I'm going to hold it up to the piece of wood, I'm going to move it into place. Actually, better yet, I'm going to put my knife right, I'm going to make the first mark right now, just to mark it to length, right where I said. Okay, here, I'll tilt it so you can see this. At least what I'm doing in broad strokes. And then I'll hold it up closer again. So I'm going to make my first mark here right on the corner. Okay, now I'm going to slide my square up to the knife mark. And I'm resting the flat bevel of the knife on the flat edge surface of the square right here. Now, I'm going to mark a line. Again, bevel of the knife. I want the edge of the knife to be right in that corner, but I don't want to be wearing away or trying to cut away my square basically. So I want that flat bevel to be resting along the square. So just mark it like that. And you do lightly at first. Don't try to do super deep, because if you're applying all that pressure, you know, something bad's going to happen. You might cut yourself, but it also might just be as simple as you lose your place, right? So just don't press too hard. You can always go back over it if you feel like you're not digging in. Now, the great thing about this method is that where it shows, you've already made your saw cut. Every bit the saw does is now below the surface because you've already cut the surface. So I lost my place. So I'm going to put my knife in that knife line, slide the square back up. Oh, and I'm going to make it around the corner too, because I have this little ledge part of the square. And then I can flip the square to be on the edge. Put my knife in the mark, slide the square up to the knife, and finish the mark. Now I have 2 lines to cut to, 1 in each dimension. And if you recall from my Ryoba video, Get You a Ryoba, that's what you need. So let me show this up close where you can see it. Not going to hold the knife for this part for safety reasons. I want to concentrate on the camera. Okay, let's see if we can get it to focus. Can you see this knife line here? A little bit, I think. All right, flip it around and show you the corner. It is right here. See that knife line? Okay, so now, if you want to, you can continue with your knife, or you can do this with a chisel if you have one. That's another video though. And this knife line came down like this. Now, if you have a waste side, which would be here for my coaster, you can cut in and relieve a little triangular tip of wood, come in like this. And that goes even a little bit further to start the saw cut for you. That's an optional step. If you really want to do a really perfect job in the cut, like some people call it a class 1 cut, then that would be a really good idea. And then once you do that, you can cut to my line. Now, cut to your line. So if you haven't seen my video on getting one of these saws, go watch that video. I'll show it in a little more detail. But the bottom line of it is that with a little practice, you can cut to a line. And if you're cutting to 2 lines like this, then it makes an accurate plane, a planar surface, like geometry, that kind of a plane, not a hand plane. You're essentially connecting 3 points, here, here, and under this other front edge here. You're connecting this point, and this point. First with lines, and then with this flat plane of the saw blade. So I'll get through this saw. I'll get through the saw cut pretty quick, and we'll see the result. And you can see that this is, I don't have this clamped. It might be slightly easier if I did. These are some of the compromises you might make if you're working in a small space, right? But I'm doing this, and it's accurate, and I don't have to have a table saw in here, which I definitely can't fit. Once I really get going, I can do this so that I'm pulling down instead of sideways. Then the board doesn't wiggle around so much, and it really works well for this Ryoba. Okay, so feels like this is the waste piece, but it's not. This is my very thick coaster. So I've got a thick coaster. You can see the surface of this kind of shows the teeth marks, but when you feel it, it's very smooth and flat. It might take a couple of strokes with a plane or just a flat sanding block to get that close. And as you can see, it came out nice and square. So a square is something you're probably going to buy anyway. If you're wondering what to buy, I hope I've helped you a little bit. This would be certainly a fine place to start for $16. You can use either a pencil or a knife to mark, depending on what you're doing and how accurate you want it to be. A knife is more accurate. And you can do a lot if you buy the right square. And you should check it for accuracy before you're buying it. Or if you're buying online, at least check after in case you have to return it. An 89.5 degree square is not useful. Not at all. Okay, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks very much for coming. Don't forget to use the buttons below. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye now.